Chapter 11. The Nagual Woman. Don Juan said that when he was put in the care of the westerly women to be cleansed, he was also put under the guidance of the northerly woman, who was comparable to Florinda, the number one stalker, who taught him the principles of that art. She and his benefactor gave him the actual means to secure the 3 male warriors, the 1 courier, and the 4 female stalkers, who were to make up his party. The 8 female seers of his benefactor's group had searched for the distinctive configurations of luminosity and had had no difficulty whatever in finding the appropriate types of male and female warriors for Don Juan's party. His benefactor, however, did not permit those seers to do anything to gather the warriors they had found. It was left to Don Juan to apply the principles of stalking and secure them. The first warrior to appear was Vicente. Don Juan did not have enough of a command of stalking to be able to draft him. His benefactor and the northerly stalker had to do most of the work. Then came Silvio Manuel, later Don Gennaro, and finally Emilito, the courier. Florinda was the first female warrior. She was followed by Zoila, then Delia, and then Carmela. Don Juan said that his benefactor had insisted relentlessly that they deal with the world exclusively in terms of controlled folly. The end result was a stupendous team of practitioners who thought up and executed the most intricate schemes. When they had all acquired a degree of proficiency in the art of stalking, their benefactor thought it was time for him to find the Nagual woman for them. True to his policy of helping everyone to help themselves, he waited to bring her into their world, not only until all of them were expert stalkers, but until Don Juan had learned to see. Although Don Juan regretted immensely the time wasted in waiting, he conceded that their joint effort in securing her created a stronger tie among all of them. It revitalized their commitment to seek their freedom. His benefactor began to unfold his strategy for drawing in the Nagual woman by all of a sudden becoming a devout Catholic. He demanded that Don Juan, being the heir to his knowledge, behave like a son and go to church with him. He dragged him to Mass nearly every day. Don Juan said that his benefactor, who was very charming and glib, would introduce him to everyone in church as his son, a bone setter. Don Juan, by his own account, an uncivilized pagan at that time, was mortified to find himself in social situations where he had to talk and give an account of himself. He put his mind at ease with the idea that his benefactor had an ulterior motive for everything he was doing. He attempted to deduce from observing him what his reasons might be. His benefactor's actions were consistent and seemed above board. As an exemplary Catholic, he gained the trust of scores of people, especially the parish priest, who held him in high esteem, considering him a friend and confidant. Don Juan could not figure out what he was up to. The thought crossed his mind that his benefactor might have sincerely taken up Catholicism or gone mad. He had not yet understood that a warrior never loses his mind under any circumstances. Don Juan's qualms about going to church vanished when his benefactor began introducing him to the daughters of people he was acquainted with. He enjoyed that, although he felt ill at ease. Don Juan thought that his benefactor was helping him to exercise his tongue. He was neither glib nor charming, and his benefactor had said that a Nagual, perforce, had to be both. One Sunday during Mass, after nearly a year of almost daily attendance, Don Juan found out the real reason for their going to church. He was kneeling next to a girl named Olinda, the daughter of one of his benefactor's acquaintances. He turned to exchange a glance with her, as had become their custom after months of daily contact. Their eyes met, and suddenly Don Juan saw her as a luminous being, and then he saw her doubleness. Olinda was a double woman. His benefactor had known it all along and had taken the most difficult path in order to put Don Juan in touch with her. Don Juan confessed to us that the moment was overwhelming to him. His benefactor knew that Don Juan had seen. His mission to put the double beings together had been completed successfully and impeccably. He stood up, and his eyes swept every corner of that church. Then he walked out without a backward glance. There was nothing more for him to do there. Don Juan said that when his benefactor walked out in the middle of Mass, all heads turned. Don Juan wanted to follow him, but Olinda boldly clasped his hand and held him back. He knew then that the power of seeing had not been his alone. Something had gone through both of them, and they were transfixed. Don Juan realized all of a sudden that not only had the Mass ended, but that they were already outside the church. His benefactor was trying to calm Olinda's mother, who was incensed and shamed by their unexpected and inadmissible display of affection. Don Juan was at a loss as to what to do next. He knew that it was up to him to figure out a plan. He had the resources, but the importance of the event made him lose confidence in his ability. He forsook his training as a stalker and became lost in the intellectual dilemma of whether or not to treat Olinda as controlled folly. His benefactor told him that he could not help him. His duty had been only to put them together, and that was where his responsibility ended. It was up to Don Juan to take the necessary steps to secure her. He suggested that Don Juan even consider marrying her, if that was what was needed. Only after she came to him of her own accord could he help Don Juan by directly intervening with her as a Nagual. Don Juan tried a formal courtship. He was not well received by her parents, who could not conceive of someone from a different social class as a suitor for their daughter. Olinda was not an Indian. Her family were middle-class urban dwellers, owners of a small business. The father had other plans for his daughter. He threatened to send her away if Don Juan persisted in his intention to marry her. Don Juan said that double beings, especially women, are extraordinarily conservative, even timid. Olinda was no exception. After their initial exhilaration in church, she was overtaken by caution and then by fear. Her own reaction scared her. As a strategic maneuver, his benefactor made Don Juan retreat to make it appear as if he were acquiescing to his father, who had not approved of the girl, which was the assumption of everyone who had witnessed the incident in church. People gossiped that their display had displeased his father so intensely that his father, who was such a devout Catholic, had never returned to church. His benefactor told Don Juan that a warrior is never under siege. To be under siege implies that one has personal possessions that could be blockaded. A warrior has nothing in the world except his impeccability, and impeccability cannot be threatened. Nonetheless, in a battle for one's life, such as the one Don Juan was waging to secure the Nagual woman, a warrior should strategically use every means available. Accordingly, Don Juan resolved to use any portion of his stalker's knowledge that he had to get the girl. To that end, he engaged Silvio Manuel to use his sorcerer's arts, which even at that early stage were formidable, to abduct the girl. Silvio Manuel and Gennaro, who was a true daredevil, stole into the girl's house disguised as old washerwomen. It was midday, and everyone in the house was busy preparing food for a large group of relatives and friends who were coming to dinner. They were having an informal going-away party for Olinda. Silvio Manuel was counting on the likelihood that people who saw two strange washerwomen coming in with bundles of clothes would assume that it had to do with Olinda's party and would not get suspicious. Don Juan had supplied Silvio Manuel and Gennaro beforehand with all the information they needed concerning the routines of the members of the household. He told them that the washerwomen usually carried their bundles of washed clothes into the house and left them in a storage room to be ironed. Carrying a large bundle of clothes, Silvio Manuel and Gennaro went directly into that room, knowing that Olinda would be there. Don Juan said that Silvio Manuel went up to Olinda and used his mesmeric powers to make her faint. They put her inside a sack, wrapped the sack with her bedsheets, and walked out, leaving behind the bundle they had carried in. They bumped into her father at the door. He did not even glance at them. Don Juan's benefactor was utterly put out with their maneuver. He ordered Don Juan to take the girl back immediately to her house. It was imperative, he said, that the double woman come to the benefactor's house of her own free will. Perhaps not with the idea of joining them, but at least because they interested her. Don Juan felt that everything was lost. The odds against getting her back into her house unnoticed were too great. But Silvio Manuel figured out a solution. He proposed that they should let the 4 women of Don Juan's party take the girl to a deserted road where Don Juan would rescue her. Silvio Manuel wanted the women to pretend that they were kidnapping her. At some point along the road, someone would see them and come in pursuit. Their pursuer would overtake them, and they would drop the sack with a degree of force so as to be convincing. The pursuer would be, of course, Don Juan, who would happen miraculously to be at just the right place at the right time. Silvio Manuel demanded true-to-life action. He ordered the women to gag the girl, who by then would surely be awake and screaming inside the sack, and then to run for miles carrying the sack. He told them to hide from their pursuer. Finally, after a truly exhausting ordeal, they were to drop the sack in such a way that the girl could witness a most vicious fight between Don Juan and the 4 women. Silvio Manuel told the women that this had to be utterly realistic. He armed them with sticks and instructed them to hit Don Juan convincingly before they were driven away. Of the women, Zoila was the one most easily carried away by hysteria. As soon as they began whacking on Don Juan, she became possessed by her role and gave a chilling performance, striking Don Juan so hard that flesh was torn from his back and shoulders. For a moment, it seemed that the kidnappers were going to win. Silvio Manuel had to come out of his hiding place and, pretending to be a passerby, remind them that it was only a ploy and that it was time to run away. Don Juan thus became Olinda's savior and protector. He told her that he could not take her back to her house himself because he had been injured, but he would send her back instead with his pious father. She helped him walk to his benefactor's house. Don Juan said that he did not have to pretend injury. He was bleeding profusely and barely made it to the door. When Olinda told his benefactor what had happened, his benefactor's desire to laugh was so excruciating he had to disguise it as weeping. Don Juan had his wounds bandaged and then went to bed. Olinda began to explain to him why her father was opposed to him, but she did not finish. Don Juan's benefactor came into the room and told her that it was evident to him from observing her walk that the kidnappers had injured her back. He offered to align it for her before it became critical. Olinda hesitated. Don Juan's benefactor reminded her that the kidnappers had not been playing. They had nearly killed his son after all. That comment sufficed. She came to the benefactor's side and let him give her a sound blow on her shoulder blade. It made a cracking sound, and Olinda entered into a state of heightened awareness. He disclosed the rule to her, and just like Don Juan, she accepted it in full. There was no doubt, no hesitation. The Nagual woman and Don Juan found completeness and silence in each other's company. Don Juan said that the feeling they had for each other had nothing to do with affection or need. It was rather a shared physical sense that an ominous barrier had been broken within them, and they were one and the same being. Don Juan and his Nagual woman, as the rule prescribed, worked together for years to find the set of 4 female dreamers who turned out to be Nelida, Zulica, Cecilia, and Ermelinda, and the 3 couriers, Juan Tuma, Teresa, and Marta. Finding them was another occasion when the pragmatic nature of the rule was made clear to Don Juan. All of them were exactly what the rule said they were going to be. Their advent introduced a new cycle for everyone, Don Juan's benefactor and his party included. For Don Juan and his warriors, it meant the cycle of dreaming. And for his benefactor and his party, it meant a period of unequaled impeccability in their acts. His benefactor explained to Don Juan that when he was young and was first introduced to the idea of the rule as the means to freedom, he had been elated, transfixed with joy. Freedom to him was a reality around the corner. When he came to understand the nature of the rule as a map, his hopes and optimism were redoubled. Later on, sobriety took hold of his life. The older he got, the less chance he saw for his success and the success of his party. Finally, he became convinced that no matter what they did, the odds were too great against their tenuous human awareness ever flying free. He made peace with himself and his fate and surrendered to failure. He told the eagle from his inner self that he was glad and proud to have nourished his awareness. The eagle was welcome to it. Don Juan told us that the same mood was shared by all the members of his benefactor's party. The freedom proposed in the rule was something they considered unattainable. They had caught glimpses of the annihilating force that the eagle is, and felt that they did not stand a chance against it. All of them had agreed, nevertheless, that they would live their lives impeccably for no other reason than to be impeccable. Don Juan said that his benefactor and his party, in spite of their feelings of inadequacy, or perhaps because of those feelings, did find their freedom. They did enter into the third attention. Not as a group, however, but one by one. The fact that they found the passageway was the final corroboration of the truth contained in the rule. The last one to leave the world of everyday life awareness was his benefactor. He complied with the rule and took Don Juan's Nagual woman with him. As the two of them dissolved into total awareness, Don Juan and all his warriors were made to explode from within. He could not find no other way of describing the feeling entailed in being forced to forget all they had witnessed of their benefactor's world. The one who never forgot was Silvio Manuel. It was he who engaged Don Juan in the back-breaking effort of bringing back together the members of their group, all of whom had been scattered. He then plunged them into the task of finding the totality of themselves. It took them years to accomplish both tasks. Don Juan had extensively discussed the topic of forgetting, but only in connection with their great difficulty in getting together again and starting over without their benefactor. He never told us exactly what it entailed to forget or to gain the totality of oneself. In that respect, he was true to his benefactor's teaching, only helping us to help ourselves. To this effect, he trained La Gorda and me to see together, and was able to show us that although human beings appear to a seer as luminous eggs, the egg-like shape is an external cocoon, a shell of luminosity that houses a most intriguing, haunting, mesmeric core made up of concentric circles of yellowish luminosity, the color of a candle's flame. During our final session, he had us see people milling around a church. It was late afternoon, almost dark, yet the creatures inside their rigid, luminous cocoons radiated enough light to render everything around them crystal clear. The sight was wondrous. Don Juan explained that the egg-shaped shells, which seemed so bright to us, were indeed dull. The luminosity emanated from the brilliant core. The shell, in fact, dulled its radiance. Don Juan revealed to us that the shell must be broken in order to liberate that being. It must be broken from the inside at the right time, just as creatures that hatch out of eggs break their shells. If they fail to do so, they suffocate and die. As with creatures that hatch out of eggs, there is no way for a warrior to break the shell of his luminosity until the time is right. Don Juan told us that losing the human form was the only means of breaking that shell, the only means of liberating that haunting, luminous core, the core of awareness, which is the eagle's food. To break the shell means remembering the other self and arriving at the totality of oneself. Don Juan and his warriors did arrive at the totality of themselves and turned then to their last task, which was to find a new pair of double beans. Don Juan said that they thought it was going to be a simple matter. Everything else had been relatively easy for them. They had no idea that the apparent effortlessness of their accomplishments as warriors was a consequence of their benefactor's mastery and personal power. Their quest for a new pair of double beans was fruitless. In all their searching, they never came across a double woman. They found several double men, but they were all well situated, busy, prolific, and so satisfied with their lives that it would have been useless to approach them. They did not need to find purpose in life. They thought they had already found it. Don Juan said that one day he realized that he and his group were getting old, and there seemed to be no hope of ever accomplishing their task. That was the first time they felt the sting of despair and impotence. Silvio Manuel insisted that they should resign themselves and live impeccably, without the hope of finding their freedom. It seemed plausible to Don Juan that this might indeed be the key to everything. In this respect, he found himself following in his benefactor's footsteps. He came to accept that an unconquerable pessimism overtakes a warrior at a certain point on his path. A sense of defeat, or perhaps more accurately, a sense of unworthiness, comes upon him almost unawares. Don Juan said that before he used to laugh at his benefactor's doubts and could not bring himself to believe that he worried in earnest. In spite of the protests and warnings of Silvio Manuel, Don Juan had thought it was all a giant ploy designed to teach them something. Since he could not believe that his benefactor's doubts were real, neither could he believe that his benefactor's resolution to live impeccably without hope of freedom was genuine. When he finally grasped that his benefactor, in all seriousness, had resigned himself to fail, it also dawned on him that a warrior's resolution to live impeccably in spite of everything cannot be approached as a strategy to ensure success. Don Juan and his party proved this truth for themselves when they realized for a fact that the odds against them were astonishing. Don Juan said that at such moments a lifelong training takes over, and the warrior enters into a state of unsurpassed humility. When the true poverty of his human resources becomes undeniable, the warrior has no recourse but to step back and lower his head. Don Juan marveled that this realization seems to have no effect on the female warriors of a party. The disarray seems to leave them unfazed. He told us that he had noted that in his benefactor's party, the females were never as worried and morose about their fate as were the males. They seemed simply to acquiesce in the judgment of Don Juan's benefactor and follow him without showing signs of emotional wear and tear. If the women were ruffled at some level, they were indifferent to it. To be busy was all that counted for them. It was as if only the males had bid for freedom and felt the impact of a counter-bidding. In his own group, Don Juan observed the same contrast. The women readily agreed with him when he said that his resources were inadequate. He could only conclude that the women, although they never mentioned it, had never believed they had any resources to begin with. There was consequently no way they could feel disappointed or despondent at finding out they were impotent. They had known it all along. Don Juan told us that the reason the ego demanded twice as many female warriors as males was precisely because females have an inherent balance which is lacking in males. At the crucial moment, it is the men who get hysterical and commit suicide if they judge that everything is lost. A woman may kill herself due to lack of direction and purpose, but not because of the failure of a system to which she happens to belong. After Don Juan and his party of warriors had given up hope, or rather, as Don Juan put it, After he and the male warriors had reached rock bottom, and the women had found suitable ways to humor them, Don Juan finally stumbled upon a double man he could approach. I was that double man. He said that since no one in his right mind is going to volunteer for such a preposterous project as a struggle for freedom, he had to follow his benefactor's teaching and, in true stalker style, reel me in as he had reeled in the members of his own party. He needed to have me alone at a place where he could apply physical pressure to my body, and it was necessary that I go there of my own accord. He lured me into his house with great ease. As he said, securing the double man is never a great problem. The difficulty is to find one who is available. That first visit to his house was, from the point of view of my daily awareness, an uneventful session. Don Juan was charming and joked with me. He guided the conversation to the fatigue the body experiences after long drives, a subject that seemed thoroughly inconsequential to me as a student of anthropology. Then he made the casual comment that my back appeared to be out of alignment, and without another word put a hand on my chest and straightened me up and gave me a sound rap on the back. He caught me so unprepared that I blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, I felt as if he had broken my spine. But I knew that I was different. I was someone else, and not the me I knew. From then on, whenever I saw him, he would make me shift from my right side awareness to my left, and then he would reveal the rule to me. Almost immediately after finding me, Don Juan encountered a double woman. He did not put me in touch with her through a scheme, as his benefactor had done with him, but devised a ploy as effective and elaborate as any of his benefactors, by which he himself enticed and secured the double woman. He assumed this burden because he believed that it was the benefactor's duty to secure both double beings immediately upon finding them, and then put them together as partners in an inconceivable enterprise. He told me that one day when he was living in Arizona, he had gone to a government office to fill out an application. The lady at the desk told him to take it to an employee in the adjacent section, and without looking, she pointed to her left. Don Juan followed the direction of her outstretched arm and saw a double woman sitting at a desk. When he took his application to her, he realized that she was just a young girl. She told him that she had nothing to do with applications. Nevertheless, out of sympathy for a poor old Indian, she took the time to help him process it. Some legal documents were needed, documents which Don Juan had in his pocket, but he pretended total ignorance and helplessness. He made it seem that the bureaucratic organization was an enigma to him. It was not difficult at all to portray total mindlessness, Don Juan said. All he had to do was revert to what had once been his normal state of awareness. It was to his purpose to prolong his interaction with the girl for as long as he could. His mentor had told him, and he himself had verified it in his search, that double women are quite rare. His mentor had also warned him that they have inner resources that make them highly volatile. Don Juan was afraid that if he did not play his cards expertly, she would leave. He played on her sympathy to gain time. He created further delay by pretending that the legal documents were lost. Nearly every day, he would bring in a different one to her. She would read it and regretfully tell him that it was not the right one. The girl was so moved by his sorry condition that she even volunteered to pay for a lawyer to draw him up an affidavit in lieu of the papers. After 3 months of this, Don Juan thought it was time to produce the documents. By then, she had gotten used to him and almost expected to see him every day. Don Juan came one last time to express his thanks and say goodbye. He told her that he would have liked to bring her a gift to show his appreciation, but he did not have money even to eat. She was moved by his candor and took him to lunch. As they were eating, he mused that a gift does not necessarily have to be an object that one buys. It could be something that is only for the eyes of the beholder, something to remember rather than to possess. She was intrigued by his words. Don Juan reminded her that she had expressed compassion for the Indians and their condition as paupers. He asked her if she would like to see the Indians in a different light, not as paupers, but as artists. He told her that he knew an old man who was the last of his line of power dancers. He assured her that the man would dance for her at his request, and furthermore, he promised her that never in her life had she seen anything like it, nor would she ever again. It was something that only Indians witnessed. She was delighted at the idea. She picked him up after work, and they headed for the hills, where he told her the Indian lived. Don Juan took her to his own house. He made her stop the car quite a distance away, and they began to walk the rest of the way. Before they reached the house, he stopped and drew a line with his foot in the sandy, dried dirt. He told her that the line was a boundary and coaxed her to step across. The Nagual woman herself told me that up to that point she had been very intrigued with the possibility of witnessing a genuine Indian dancer. But when the old Indian drew a line on the dirt and called it a boundary, she began to hesitate. Then she became outright alarmed when he told her that the boundary was for her alone, and that once she stepped over it, there was no way of returning. The Indian apparently saw her consternation and tried to put her at ease. He politely patted her on the arm and gave her his guarantee that no harm would come to her while he was around. The boundary could be explained, he told her, as a form of symbolic payment to the dancer, for he did not want money. Ritual was in lieu of money, and ritual required that she step over the boundary of her own accord. The old Indian gleefully stepped over the line and told her that to him all of it was sheer Indian nonsense, but that the dancer, who was watching them from inside the house, had to be humored if she wanted to see him dance. The Nagual woman said that she suddenly became so afraid that she could not move to cross the line. The old Indian made an effort to persuade her, saying that stepping over that boundary was beneficial to the entire body. Crossing it had not only made him feel younger, it actually made him younger. Such power did that boundary have. To demonstrate his point, he crossed back again, and immediately his shoulders slouched. The corners of his mouth drooped. His eyes lost their shine. The Nagual woman could not deny the differences the crossings had made. Don Juan recrossed the line a third time. He breathed deeply, expanding his chest, his movements brisk and bold. The Nagual woman said that the thought crossed her mind that he might even make sexual advances. Her car was too far away to make a run for it. The only thing she could do was to tell herself that it was stupid to fear that old Indian. Then the old man made another appeal to her reason and to her sense of humor. In a conspiratorial tone, as if he were revealing a secret with some reluctance, he told her that he was just pretending to be young to please the dancer, and that if she did not help him by crossing the line, he was going to faint at any moment from the stress of walking without slouching. He walked back and forth across the line to show her the immense strain involved in his pantomime. The Nagual woman said that his pleading eyes revealed the pain his old body was going through to mimic youth. She crossed the line to help him and be done with it. She wanted to go home. The moment she crossed the line, Don Juan took a prodigious jump and glided over the roof of the house. The Nagual woman said that he flew like a huge boomerang, and when he landed next to her, she fell on her back. Her fright was beyond anything she had ever experienced, but so was her excitement at having witnessed such a marvel. She did not even ask how he had accomplished such a magnificent feat. She wanted to run back to her car and head for home. The old man helped her up and apologized for having tricked her. In fact, he said, he himself was the dancer, and his flight over the house had been his dance. He asked her if she had paid attention to the direction of his flight. The Nagual woman circled her hand counterclockwise. He patted her head paternally and told her that it was very auspicious that she had been attentive. Then he said that she may have injured her back in her fall, and that he could not just let her go without making sure she was all right. Boldly, he straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin and the back of her head, as if he were directing her to extend her spine. He then gave her a sound smack between her shoulder blades, literally knocking all the air out of her lungs. For a moment, she was unable to breathe, and she fainted. When she regained consciousness, she was inside his house. Her nose was bleeding. Her ears were buzzing. Her breathing was accelerated. She could not focus her eyes. He instructed her to take deep breaths to a count of 8. The more she breathed, the clearer everything became. At one point, she told me, the whole room became incandescent. Everything glowed with an amber light. She became stupefied and could not breathe deeply anymore. The amber light by then was so thick it resembled fog. Then the fog turned into amber cobwebs. It finally dissipated, but the world remained uniformly amber for a while longer. Don Juan began to talk to her then. He took her outside the house and showed her that the world was divided into 2 halves. The left side was clear, but the right side was veiled in amber fog. He told her that it is monstrous to think that the world is understandable, or that we ourselves are understandable. He said what she was perceiving was an enigma, a mystery that one could only accept in humbleness and awe. He then revealed the rule to her. Her clarity of mind was so intense that she understood everything he said. The rule seemed to her appropriate and self-evident. He explained to her that the 2 sides of a human being are totally separate, and that it takes great discipline and determination to break that seal and go from one side to the other. A double being has a great advantage. The condition of being double permits relatively easy movement between the compartments on the right side. The great disadvantage of double beings is that by virtue of having 2 compartments, they are sedentary, conservative, afraid of change. Don Juan said to her that his intention had been to make her shift from her extreme right compartment to her more lucid, sharper, left-right side. But instead, through some inexplicable quirk, his blow had sent her all across her doubleness, from her everyday extreme right side to her extreme left side. He tried 4 times to make her revert back to a normal state of awareness, but to no avail. His blows helped her, however, to turn her perception of the wall of fog on and off at will. Although he had not intended it, Don Juan had been right in saying that the line was a one-way boundary for her. Once she crossed it, just like Silvio Manuel, she never returned. When Don Juan put the Nagual woman and me face to face, neither of us had known of the other's existence. Yet we instantly felt that we were familiar with one another. Don Juan knew from his own experience that the solace double beings feel in each other's company is indescribable and far too brief. He told us that we had been put together by forces incomprehensible to our reason, and that the only thing we did not have was time. Every minute might be the last. Therefore, it had to be lived with the Spirit. Once Don Juan had put us together, all that was left for him and his warriors to do was find 4 female stalkers, 3 male warriors, and 1 male courier to make up our party. To that end, Don Juan found Lydia, Josefina, La Gorda, Rosa, Benigno, Nestor, Pablito, and the courier, Eligio. Each one of them was a replica in an undeveloped form of the members of Don Juan's own party.